have to do. You are listening to Candid Frank Live on Rouge Radio. And the script is laid out there for you tonight to see what we're going to do. We'll try to do that more often. This is a work in progress. It's like Godzilla meeting, what's the other, the Hydra, whatever it is, the other monster. Jason and I both have ideas about how things should be done, and unfortunately they're not the same. So it's going to take us a while to get this dancing thing in order. But having said that, football is football, and the CJFL has kicked into gear. We'll talk about them a little later in about 20 minutes. And the CFL, of course, is rolling big time. We are now, in week 8. I should say week 9. We just had week 8. And so we are approaching the mid part of the season. So this is where all the CFL teams now basically got an idea of what they've got. If they don't, then they need to hire new management. Oh, a few teams did do that, and that being Winnipeg and Montreal. So basically now this is the time of year when things start to get serious as far as in the olden days, back in my first football, beginnings of my football memories and knowledge and love of the game, Leo's Airlift was the famous thing. Leo Cahill used to, every year would have his airlift of players. All of a sudden there'd be these 8-10 players that show up, and nobody knew who was leaving until that moment. And that's basically what we're looking at in the next couple of weeks. There are some adjustments that teams have to make. Last year, the Toronto Argonauts, a combination of adjustments and also becoming a seamless team, created a great year for them, and that is a Grey Cup year. The same can be said for teams like Winnipeg, Montreal. Really, it really can be said, even though they look hopeless right now. Even Edmonton. I got to tell you, just because there's the 4 powerhouses, Hamilton's the in-between team, I think. Hamilton's already on the road to recovery. They've won 2 in a row, and they're full value for the 2 that they won. And after what the Argos went through with Edmonton, the fact that Hamilton beat Edmonton in the last minute isn't a much smaller feat than what the Argos did with Edmonton. So Edmonton, unfortunately, is coming up a little short, but I can see that changing. They're a team that doesn't give up. Anybody who watched the Argo-Edmonton game learned that immediately, that they're not a team that gives up, and they won't give up. So the Montreal Alouettes in the East, along with Winnipeg right now, they're fighting for the 3rd playoff spot with, of course, Edmonton on the other side in the Western Conference, breathing down both their necks. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a dogfight. Either of those 3 teams could make it, just as 2 of those teams may not. And they won't, because if they don't sort things out, they're going to be having a battle of the bottom feeders. So it looks like Hamilton's squared away, and Calgary, a little, they had a great game against Saskatchewan, and then they come back with a loss. Well, and BC, I mean, the powerhouses are in the West. There's no doubt about it. I don't think anybody will argue the point that that's not to suggest that if the Argos were in the West that they would be in last. I don't think so. I think they'd be fighting in there in the middle of they'd be in the middle of that fight. They'd fit right in with those other 3 teams, being Calgary, BC, and Saskatchewan. So this is the CFL portion of our program, and right now the biggest story in the CFL, even though for those of you that are not in Toronto or aren't Argo fans, this Friday Calgary comes in for the, Calgary, when it comes to Argo history and a lot of the Argo history that hurts, Calgary has been front and center. But in recent memory and in recent history, the Argos have beaten Calgary 6 straight times. They get the opportunity to make it the 7th on a monumental evening. This will be the boat logo evening. They'll be wearing the boat logo as a special 30-year anniversary with 21 Argos from that era showing up to help the fans celebrate the first Grey Cup in 31, 32 years that led to the Argonauts' resurgence and the winning of more Grey Cups in the following, I guess it's safe to say, 30 years. They won a few more. So it's a big deal for us here in Toronto, and for those of you that are listening elsewhere, get over it. It is one of those things. We do enjoy our football here in Toronto. It may not seem as though, but we do. And I think a guy to listen to is an ex-Argo, but really not much of an Argo. But I wanted to get his feeling about the CFL this year, and it is something that that's important. Is there are people in this world that we whose opinions we trust, and then of course there's also the opinions of those that we're not quite sure of. Well, Matt Dunnigan's one of those people that I'd like to.
I am Rider Pride, the flag bearers of our league,
the spirit of our game.
I will deafen all foes.
I will represent my team,
my province, and my fellow fans
with honor and pride,
and inspire the next generation
of the Rider Nation.
Green is my color.
Football is my game.
This is my pledge.
This is my pledge.
This is my pledge.
Well, since he's going to be difficult, since Matt is going to be difficult, we'll save it for another day. There's another guy that I think speaks to football in a great sense, and his name is Damon Allen.
Good memories being an Argonaut.
Of course it does. I mean, I'm a big fan of the CFL and spent many years and gave my heart and soul to the game, and so it's really nice, the fact that I live out here in Oakville. It's really nice to come out and support. Now I'm an alumni, so. But I'm alumni of many different teams, but this is where I live right now. So.
One thing that must happen in Oakville and Burlington, you guys could probably have enough players to play a game between Oakville and Burlington, between all the ex and alumni players that live in the vicinity.
That is absolutely true, and Oakville will have a pretty good team.
I'm sure they would. I know they'd have a good quarterback. Damon, you really, the fans love you. They haven't forgotten you at all. We think of you all the time, and we wonder what you're doing. What are you doing now?
Well, right now I'm self-employed and independent, and the great thing about that is, I have a high school quarterback challenge that I'm trying to grow nationally, and I really excited about the years I've done the event here in Toronto, and we just launched BC and Saskatchewan, and so eventually what I would like to be a national program, and what the program is all about is it gathers high school quarterbacks, and they compete at a 4-event challenge, which it has something to do with throwing the football and hitting moving targets and all those things, and the winners receive university scholarships, and so it'll be really nice as I continue to grow it from city to city to impact young kids, and also impacting the quarterback position in Canada.
I understand also you're working with an Olympic gold medalist, Special Olympics gold medalist, working with you on that.
Oh, absolutely, man, especially because it has something to do with athletes against bullies. And he is an athlete, and what a wonderful man he is, and really looking forward to the continue the work and effort. And that's athletes all across sport here in Canada. Bullying is really a sensitive topic, and we don't want to lose and continue to lose lives because of bullying. So I'm really thankful that all these athletes can come on board for a really good cause. That's athletes against bullying.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we promote on our program. One thing, what about this thing with the universities, the CIS and the CFL teams now bringing in quarterbacks to camp? That's much like what you were talking about. That would work well with what you're doing, wouldn't it?
Well, absolutely. As it continues to evolve and we in the CFL starts to really take consideration about the quarterback position and giving them the opportunity, because it hasn't been done in many years, and there's been flashes brilliance. But if you have to continue to bring up the great Russ Jackson as a model and example, then there is a level and there's a gap that's missing with the rest of the quarterbacks. And so my hope is that we'll continue to see opportunities for the Canadian quarterback to play, and in result, that will also help my academy and training and all those things. And now, because young kids will have something to aspire to.
I hope I'll give you my card, and you can send me any information that you have there, and we'll, however you want, you can send it to me. I've heard about the program, and the program will be going across the country. It's just that you just started now with BC and Saskatchewan.
Yes, I just started launching this year, and so hopefully next year we'll launch 2 more cities, and eventually right now that, we had to go nationally to be able to get, national sponsorship and all those things. And so I'm really excited about the program and what it gives young kids and young quarterbacks the opportunity to showcase their skills, but at the same time further their education. And that's part of what I believe in, young kids being involved in sport and also education.
What is it about CFL players that has that caring attitude that you don't see? I'm not saying it doesn't exist with other leagues or teams, but in the CFL you seem to have a bunch of guys who really care about the community. Why is that? I'm trying to figure out, is it because they're not overpaid? I don't know. What reason is it that they seem more down to earth?
It's a community-based league as well. We're probably the most accessible players in North America when it comes to community work and involvement.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's on the mindset, and that's part of what the game is all about. That's why, we always talk about the Grey Cup being the People's Cup, because anybody can call the CFL the Hall of Fame and say, we want to purchase the cup and rent it out for a day, and it's not. I don't believe that happens too often in any other sport.
Anytime you want to come and say hello to Section 134, we're the Argo Lifers. We enjoy, as far as we're concerned, doesn't matter how many teams you've played on, you're an Argo Lifer too.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I do feel like I'm an Argo Lifer, and we'll always remember my experience here in Toronto and how the fans across Ontario have treated me and welcomed me into the city of Toronto, and I'm a big fan of this city and this.
Thank you for everything, truly, and thanks for all the great memories as well.
Appreciate it very much.
Really do appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Damon Allen.
Yeah, Damon Allen. John Granger.
Damon Allen, good guy. How you doing, Frank?
Good. Was that fun today or what?
It was a hoot. If you can call a Q&A session with a bunch of players a hoot, it was definitely a hoot for me anyway. Jan Craney, can't say enough about this guy. They were all great. Carl Brazeley, Dan Ferroni, Andre Jury, Jeff Keeping, but Jan Craney, what a storyteller. And they were, all three of them were, but he had me cracking up every time he opened up his mouth. He finished with a punchline at the end of the story somehow. It ended up being a punchline, but what a really funny guy. He should be a comedian.
Yeah, he pretty much is. I said to him, I would like to do an interview. And I said, we'll do a 15, 20 minutes. 2.5 hours later, I had to edit the damn thing down.
I remember that one. That was when he called you from South Africa.
Yes.
Did it with you. Yes. Yeah.
We did it.
No, really great guy, Skype. And it was refreshing to hear some of their private sides of their story and their versions, and locker room talk kind of stuff, right? And it was really interesting to hear how they opened up about a couple of things. Drinking was not thought of as a serious kind of thing back then, was it, Frank? They used to do it in between practices.
Apparently, we found out today that, and I liked Condridge Holloway's the quote attributed to him. And Condridge, we apologize, but the part where how they ice down after a game. Well, they were drinking beer in there's a river in Guelph, and it gets very cold, so they're sitting in the river drinking beer. So they're icing down from the outside in and the inside out.
That's right. That was hilarious.
Holy crap! I mean, yeah, well, you know what? It was a different time. I don't know how to express it, but there weren't we weren't as politicized back then.
Right.
People did politicized, B glamorized. Like drinking wasn't glamorized; it was automatically done within reason. Nowadays
so smoking, cigarettes, right?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah,
it wasn't. I don't know whether it's because people have more stress nowadays on the whole, or all that wonderful stuff. They drank to relax, not to get drunk.
Absolutely. And not to overblow it, it wasn't a bunch of drunk storytelling here, but it had its humor to it. And for anybody who could make it down there today, it's one of those things where take the time, if you ever get a chance in any city, not just Toronto, Montreal, whatever. If you have these old timer guys, players for life who've played for your team and have been MVPs and have won great cups for your team, take the time to go down and meet them when they do visit your town, or I should say your city or your stadium. They truly appreciate the people that come out to see them. There are no egos with this group of guys. I mean,
well,
literally,
except for Brazeley.
No, I love that guy too. I mean, that's his style. And everybody's a jokester, Frank.
Oh, he is the comedian. They asked, who's the comedian? He said, no, not me, and he winked at everybody. Of course I'm the comedian. He was a great player in his day. When I talked to him about the fact that he almost didn't come to Toronto.
Right.
Brazeley basically outgrew Ottawa. And he was going to go to the USFL or the NFL. He had all kinds of feelers out for him. And then they said, come to Toronto. And Carl Brazeley came to Toronto because of one reason alone. Bob Obilovich, the guy with the shoulder problem that scratches in a weird way. No,
you have to hear the story to know what Frank means, or be a player.
Or be a player. Yeah.
Right.
So it's nice. He didn't regret it. He ended up, when he came only because of Obilovich. He didn't really know that they had a shot at the Grey Cup. That isn't why he came. He didn't really think they had that big a shot. So, it goes to show how decisions you make or decisions you don't make a big difference in your life.
Yes. I mean, I really enjoyed going down there tonight. It was worth the trip and rush hour traffic and the whole 9 yards. And looking forward to seeing these guys play. By the way, anybody who's listening out there and you're in the Toronto area, you should not miss the rematch between Calgary and Toronto coming up. Besides the return of the best logo, I think, the boat logo. I think it's time that if you're in Toronto on Friday night, go down and see the game. It's going to be a lot of fun. And these guys who came, I think there's going to be 20.
And a great game.
And a great game.
We keep talking about how I feel about the boat logo. So I'm another one of those people that thinks the boat logo is the logo of the Argos, and football in general. But the game, Calgary's coming in here. They just got stung last week after winning a big game against Saskatchewan. So they're going to come in loaded for bear. And we know John Cornish is going to, he's going to be pumped. He's
not going to be playing, Frank.
Oh, no, what happened?
Well, they're listening. As far as last I heard, he's not going to be playing.
Oh, no.
Okay. I believe something went out today regarding him being a question mark. He didn't practice. And you know what happens when you don't practice. And I don't think they want to take a chance on him if, there's no rush, pardon the pun, with Cornish to bring him back if there's something injured or something wrong with him. If he's not 100%, why push this guy? Great Canadian player. Just wait it out. For our sake, I hope he waits it out as an Argo fan. But that's what I heard. I heard he's not going to be playing Friday. Yep. So. Yep,
it says, today, posted, Cornish questionable for Grey Cup rematch against the Argos.
Yeah, I got a little bit deeper information than that, and I heard that he's definitely. Well, I'm not going to say it now because it's up to them to say it, but he's not playing Friday. So that's good for us, okay? It's not really breaking news.
I don't know if it's good for us because, I'd like to see the opposition come into town playing at because I happen to think that the team can take on anybody, and that's all. You know what I mean?
True enough, but then again, Frank, that would be like saying, I'd like to have Cackard back there too, in the same light that I would have, like you want to see Cornish and you want to have the best players on the field. No, I like to see what kind of depth Calgary has, because if you don't have depth in the CFL, you're not going to continue winning. The only reason why the Argos have been fortunate enough to pick up these 4 games in a row has been, good coaching, first of all, but because they have depth in their receivers. Nobody felt the loss of Inman for the last few games, and that's because Childs has taken over great, and there's depth right now in the receiving core, which last year was a big question on the Argos. We were wondering, no one's really shining here, and it's kind of it's working out for them. They got the depth, so we'll see what Calgary has. I mean, and by the way, I apologize for my voice. It's a little hoarse still from Sunday. I'm trying to keep it down, Frank. I was questionable about calling because it hurts after a while. After the following day, the amount of noise that we make or try to inflict on the visitors behind, we're behind their bench. It kind of wears on you. So if I cut out, you'll know why. Sometimes it just dies on me, okay? So
okay, gotcha.
All right, thanks. So listen, I want to remind the game is at 7:30. I know we have another game before that on Thursday. By the way, you want to talk about that for our listeners out there? Montreal, what do you think now is going to happen, Frank?
Well,
we were worried about them. Sorry, we were worried about them before with Anthony. Now, without Anthony, what do you think?
Well, they're, come on. I already told you what I think of them. I mean, they're in trouble. There's no doubt about it. They're in trouble now because they got to make some major changes. And without those major changes, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. So we're gonna call it what? A slaughter on Thursday?
No, God no. They're going to win.
Okay, that's great for one of our listeners, Serge, who's a big Montreal Alouette fan, but he's also an Argonaut follower and a follower of the Toronto Argonauts boat logo page. And I'm pretty sure Serge out there is saying, "Great, we have a believer. Thanks, Frank. You believe in us." And I don't think anybody else does.
I got some land in Florida for sale too, if you like.
Hello.
I mean, BC's gonna kill him.
Yeah. It's
gonna be a horror story. Montreal fans. I mean, what is it with Montreal fans? They're gonna really take it on the chin now, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. The Calgary and Toronto game is going to be a great one. It really is going to be a great game, and the Argos have figured out ways to keep teams in the game longer. Or is it that they, there's 2 ways to look at it. They keep teams in longer, or they play well enough to win, and teams come in here and play in really well. Because I don't think you could say that Edmonton played a bad game last time.
No, I can't. I was pretty impressed with their offensive drives. Is it are they getting better at offense, or is it because our defense just screwed up? And that's how plays are made. Somebody has to screw up in order to progress. Right?
I think it's Edmonton that good. I think they're a team on the cusp.
Frank, I didn't see what I saw. There was plays blown plays where Edmonton receivers were like wide open. And we're not talking about he sped by him and he cut to the left and the Argo guy went to the right and he his ankles twisted and he fell. No, it was like this guy 4 or 5 times. The totally blown coverages, totally. Nobody around him. It was like nobody around him. It's because the two. Anyway, I'm not getting into the detail of how I saw what was going on, and I'm thinking, oh my God! And you can see Scott. I heard from Laurie Bursey this afternoon that Scott was just laying into it on the defensive linemen and the DBs and everybody. He was just swearing the hell up and down the row, just really livid. On the blown coverages, and that's what was going on. I think it was just Toronto screwing up more than really Edmonton getting it together. Okay, because when the Argos get it, when When the Argos got it together,
we can agree to disagree. I happen to think that Edmonton has a lot of talent, and that talent is going to peak through. It's peaking through now. I'm not saying that they're joining the elite CFL teams this year, but they will. I'm telling you, the second half is going to be a good half for them, and whoever they're playing is going to regret it because they're
I think Edmonton, they deserve the fans there, a loyal bunch like the rest of the West Coast, West Division fans are. I mean, but I'm sorry. It's just not going to work. Riley is, a good quarterback for them, but it's, right now their record, 1 win, and to be with 1 win this far into the season, major disappointments. They're under so much pressure, just like Winnipeg is. But Winnipeg has, bigger excuses as to why they're a screw-up right now. And it's just, I see Edmonton as, it's not going to be a crossover, Frank. I've heard your shows, and you still think it's going to be a crossover?
No. I'm saying if Winnipeg and Montreal don't smarten up and don't win some games, Edmonton could cross over, and it could very well be a 5-win team that makes that third seed in the Eastern Division.
Okay.
It's starting to look like a 5-win team, 5-13. You might make it to the playoffs.
God,
I'm just saying, John. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Edmonton's got a lock on it. I'm just telling you that between those 3 teams, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Montreal, they're only going to win a handful of games. And I don't know where they're going to win them. Probably playing against each other.
Oh, okay. Well,
you know what I'm saying. Well, think about it. How many games do you think that those 3 teams are going to win?
The thing about it is the CFL season, it could turn on a dime, Frank.
Well, sure it can. Yeah. I said that in the opening of the show. Sure.
And look what's happened to Saskatchewan. Remember, we talked to Minnesota Mike, and he's a big Rider fan and everything, and we were talking, you were saying, what do you think, 13-5, what, the record and stuff, and I'm thinking, no, I just know that every year around this time, whoever's up ahead should not be looking too far ahead, because they come down to reality. The CFL is that kind of a competitive league where you can break down their weaknesses, and if the players, the more they get tuned into the play calling, and because again, we go through the first 3, 4, 5 games of the year are really like preseason to me. Okay, because the first 3 games.
Well, they don't have a preseason. They don't really have a preseason.
Exactly.
So that's
you got it. You got it. And those first 2, 3 games, that should be the time when you break down who you're going to keep to see in preseason. Then maybe filter through another 2 games, and then you got your team. Well, I think right now we're probably in the 3rd, 4th game of the year in my eyes as far as being fine-tuned. I think the Argos got really fortunate, with the BC game. That was a surprise to me. I'm still a bit in shock of that. This Calgary game concerns me. Okay, now Andre, I talked to him one-on-one this afternoon, and just to get into his head a little bit, how the coaches are looking at this. Are they keeping you really tightly focused? And no, he said, no, they're reminding us these guys are coming in for revenge. And because of the game that they lost last week, in BC, you don't need incentive.
More
but when you lose the game before, Frank, it's more incentive, especially against the Argos on a Friday night. It's the Friday night, TSN game of the night and or the week, if you want to call it, or whatever. So it's tuning up to be a pretty exciting game. I'm looking forward to it. 2 more sleeps, as they say.
Okay, so I take it then you're saying Toronto and Calgary are a toss-up?
It's a tight one. I'm telling you.
Okay. Hamilton and Winnipeg? Hamilton and Winnipeg?
Hamilton and Winnipeg, somebody wrote out there, I don't know where I saw it, that Hamilton's going to be the only Eastern Division team that's going to win this week. So, you know what? It's going to be a close one in Toronto. I think it's going to come down to Coach Jones and how he prepped the defense. Now, with Cornish not there, I like that, but I don't think they should be hoping and planning on him not being there. I think that and this is what he's saying. We're focusing like this is the Grey Cup game number 2. And I liked hearing that. So if that's their mindset, then that's a good thing. So, Frank, we're going to have to do our job. Good thing you don't have a show on Saturday night, right? That way you can really let your voice go.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So look,
absolutely.
I don't want to be talking the whole night. I carry on your show. I just wanted to call and say
we
thanks
still
for
haven't
coming down.
talked about Edmonton and Saskatchewan. I got Edmonton in that one.
Edmonton, Saskatchewan.
Glad Mike isn't calling because he'd hate me because I've got Edmonton over. I figure Edmonton over Saskatchewan.
I'm hoping for that one.
Edmonton's too.
Let's put it this way. I am right now really feeling the pain that Winnipeg and Edmonton are going through. Okay, if you are a fan of this league, we during game day we have to hate each other to the core, and I mean that in the most nicest way. But as a group of fans of this league, I do feel the pain that the other teams go through and the other fans go through. So the Bomber fans, not to have a win in that brand new beautiful stadium, I feel their pain. And Bomber fans, I'm rooting for you. Okay, at least I am. I don't know what that means to you. Probably nothing, but I'm rooting for you because I really, really want you guys to. Even though you're our competitor in the East and all that stuff, I really, really. It's a shame, isn't it, Frank? Not to see a win.
So what you're telling me on your pro line, you're gonna check the Winnipeg and Edmonton box.
I have to.
Okay.
I have to. You can't pick one and then cheer for the other. That's wrong. All
Margaret,
right?
check his head. Margaret, check his head. Margaret, check his head.
No, Frank.
Good God, I can't believe you're actually going to do that. Good for you. No, hey, listen.
No.
The Winnipeg game, I can't side with Winnipeg on that one. I have to go with Hamilton, my second favorite team. And Edmonton, my third favorite team, is going to beat Saskatchewan. And
Edmonton this week your third favorite? Okay.
This week. Only this week.
Okay.
Only this
I thought
week.
it was Montreal. I thought Montreal
No, God, no. There isn't a team I hate more than Montreal.
I
don't like the Alouettes. I don't like the Alouettes.
I just heard Serge hanging up.
Well, Serge, you can hang up all you want. I don't like the Alouettes.
No.
I don't like the Alouettes. I don't like the
Alouette.
No, it's not because of that. It's not because of that. It's because in Montreal they want to change the name of spaghetti and turn it into something French. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something
I'm not going to argue with you on that one. Okay.
Okay, we're going to take a break. John Granger, no stranger to the CFL, and of course, no stranger to the Canadian Football League, and most of all, no stranger to the boat logo. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thank you very much, Frank. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you. Till next time.
Absolutely. And now we talked earlier about the CIS being the subject, and we will move on to the CIS. And there are a lot of reasons why the CIS is a great league. And to be honest with you, the most important reason is all the ex-CFL players that make large contributions to the CIS. Now, another thing about the CIS is the young Canadian talent. Now, the young Canadian talent that's developed in the CIS covers every position. It just seems sometimes, well, actually, it's like you heard earlier when Matt Damon said, when you talk about quarterbacks in the CFL and ones that young players can idolize, we have to go to Russ Jackson, which is shameful to say the least. Well, there's a young kid right now, and there's been young kids before, and there's a young kid right now that I think is one guy that might be able to make the breakthrough. And he comes out of Western. His name is William Finch. I had a chance to talk to him, and one of the great things that the CFL is doing in training camp in the preseason is they allow a player from CIS, and William Finch was with the Hamilton Tiger Cats last year while he was a high school student. And at Western, he was, on the sidelines watching the number one quarterback go to work, and then an injury occurred, and at the end of the season, last 2 or 3 games, William Finch was pressed into service. and he did some outstanding stuff. This kid played in high school, Burlington, a year ago, just over a year ago. And this year will be his second year at Western. And this kid has talent, a gun for an arm, an intelligent quarterback, and a very supportive family, which in football is common practice. But it's one that I always admire and can't help but mention. Young athletes can't go anywhere without the help of someone. And the first people that can help you are your family. And that's not to suggest that's the only help that you can get. But it's always good if you have family support. William has that.
I had a chance to talk to your dad.
Oh yeah.
Right, you're a local boy. I'm just down the road too. So
oh, yeah.
Burlington's it has a lot of notoriety when it comes to minor football, and that's where you came from. Tell us a little bit about the minor football experience for you.
It's been pretty good. I've played in the BMFA and the St. Peter program for I'd say 10, 11 years. Maybe even more. And the coach is always good. They always develop their players. I know some people call Burlington like I don't know what the word is, but what they call it, but it's something
the hub of football.
The hub of football. And a lot of good guys come from there, and a lot of great people too. So it's kind of cool to be known or classified in that kind of area, I guess.
Yeah, and now you're here on an intern program.
They bring in a CAS quarterback to every one of the teams. I think they started it last year, I think. It's when we can come in and just learn from the other quarterbacks there. We don't get as many reps. We more so watch rather than perform. But we get the indie period. We get the routes on air, all that stuff. And it's just cool to be in the environment. You always pick up things you really didn't know, and it's just a fun time. It's just fun to relax.
I'm sure also, William, it helps you relax when you go to, or when you may come to this camp again, or for a different reason, more or less to make the team. So it's more of it helps you, get the sharp edges off, the nervousness and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. You kind of, know what to expect. You can come in here and perform to your best ability, I guess, and not really kind of worried or nervous about what to expect. And I don't know. It's just a good experience overall. And it's a good thing to have.
What attracted you to playing football to begin with? Like, what was the big thrill of playing football?
I don't know. I think I started really young, and I think it'd be the backyard. My next door neighbors would always come over, and my dad would be out there, and we'd always be playing kill the carrier or whatever that is, and we just throw around the backyard and just make plays.
All right, and then you played in Burlington, and then you went to university, and you were down the road here, right?
Yep, and I'm in London.
In London?
Yep.
And what's that like, the experience there?
That's awesome. Coach Marshall's a great coach, and I've learned lots so far, and still more to come, so 3 or 4 more years, and it's just an awesome tradition school. No worries. Everything is there. It's awesome.
And the hope is by the time that you graduate and enter into the combine, if you will, maybe quarterbacks that are Canadian will have a better chance to make the team, because right now they don't really have the best of chances to make the team, do they?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're maybe not against it, but I know that it's hard to make it if you're a quarterback in Canada, and that's one thing one of my goals is to kind of help pave the way, or help keep that road going, because Quinlan's has his chance right now, and I hope he can kind of open the door, and it's great.
Well, good luck.
Thanks.
Wish you all the best.
Dad's a really good guy.
That is the deepest concern that we have today in the CFL is how do we bring Canadian quarterbacks into the experience? It is difficult. It is totally difficult to get it working, it happening. Now, the one good thing about the CIS, as I said, is there's great coaches, and I had a chance to talk to Coach Craney of the York University team. And, this is before the season starts. We're looking ahead, and now the season is upon us. And the CIS now looking forward to another great year, and that year is going to end up in Laval, where the Vanier Cup will be played for the first time in a long time on its own, not at the same venue that the Grey Cup is being played in. But Quebec will sell out. It will be a great event, It'll be one fun to be a part of. And I'm telling you, it's going to be really good, a really good season ahead with the CIS. And I had a chance to talk to Coach Craney and get an insight into how his team's coming together. At the Argos training camp, bumped into Coach Craney, York University coach.
I wanted to talk to you about this program that the CIS and the CFL have of bringing in quarterbacks to train with the CFL team. I've heard that that's been a real rousing success.
Oh, without a doubt. I think it's great. Anytime we can, promote Canadian content, especially at the quarterback position, I think it's so beneficial for the Canadian game and for young Canadians, playing the quarterback position.
I can't imagine how frustrating it must be for the individual player who has aspirations of being a quarterback, but they're really into it. A tough battle because it's not about talent, it's about training and experience, and the Canadian players just don't have the same amount as the American quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue. I think we're doing a better job. I know coaches and I know Football Canada, they're putting a stronger emphasis on the position. One of the big things we found in some experience I have in the U.S., one of the big differences of that position is the sport of baseball. A lot of quarterbacks in the U.S. grow up 2 years old learning how to throw a baseball. And, it's the throwing sport and that throwing motion that further enhances their training capability. So, but again, I think Football Canada has addressed it, and I think they're doing the best they can in order to rectify that situation.
Let's switch gears now. Let's talk about your team. What do we have to look forward to with the York team?
You got a lot to look forward to. It's this is the first year where it's really my team. Everyone on that team is someone I recruited and brought into the program, so I'm very excited about that. I think we're going to be a very competitive team, and our only nemesis this year is going to be youth, and that's not a bad thing, I think.
Well, you have to build from that, don't you?
You have to build from that, yeah.
Experience only comes with experience.
Exactly, and we're going to get a lot of that this year. We were a very young team last year, did some great things, finishing, third in the OUA in offense. Defense, we got to tighten up a few things, very tough schedule this year, but we're excited for that. That's how we're going to get better, is by playing the better teams.
Well, congratulations on having all the players you want, and I hope they develop at a speed and a rate of speed that you can live with.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I used to.
Well, now, are you sure there's any fish in here at all? Because we haven't latched into one today yet.
Tired of sitting on the sidelines? Want to be part of the game?
Be offensive. Be radical. The CFL is back and more radical than ever. The action never stops. It's hard-hitting, high-scoring football. Get in the game. Wear the attitude. Go, go, go. Be offensive. Be radical. CFL football. Get in the game. You have any more popcorn?
It is a difficult road to hoe if you're a quarterback and Canadian. It may get better. There may become a time when we will have a CFL quarterback, and when the CFL quarterback does arrive, I'm hoping it's William Finch. It may not be, but he's a young guy, like 19 years old, so he's got a couple of years yet of training in front of him at Western, and not a bad school to learn your football. But before him, he referred to Kyle Quinlan. And the only way to define a kid, Kyle Quinlan, retiring, the only way to define it is as sad. A kid with this much talent at such a tender age goes back to coaching at his alumni. Kyle Quinlan, the latest in a line of great Canadian quarterbacks that come out of university and are unable to crack the CFL nut as far as being a Canadian quarterback in the Canadian Football League. The winner of the 2011 Vanier Cup has ended his hopes and dreams by taking up coaching back at his home school, McMaster. But before that happened, and before the draft, this is what he'd hoped.
I think my style of play is balanced. I like to move the chains with my feet as well. I try to spread the field vertically and horizontally. The benefit we have in the CFL is it is a large field, so there's a lot of space, and if you have an athletic quarterback that can kind of take advantage of that.
Again, the bootleg for Quinlan, and what? Can you believe that? Kyle Quinlan takes flight
Well, you get to touch the ball every single play. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. And being a field general, that's something that I always took pride in. And just having your stamp on every single play, whether you're handing it off and finishing the fake and trying to block guys with your eyes and stuff like that.
Going inside, sweep now approaching. Now goes the other way. He's got some room here to get the block. What a block by the quarterback.
Kyle Quinlan just scored a knockout.
I think for me, I take pride in being a student of the game, so I'm going to continue to try to get better every single practice and every single game. And I love film study, so to stay in and watch the film and just really critique myself.
So far, the 47th Vanier Cup here in BC Place has been the Kyle Quinlan show.
It was surreal. It still hasn't fully sunk in. I think seeing that trophy every once in a while, it's starting to sink in a bit. And when we get our rings and are able to look down and see that it actually happened, everything, the whole end of that season just kept going on, and it was a great moment. Well, to continue playing the game I love, I just have so much fun playing this game, and I think Canadians should be proud of the CFL. It's a different style of football than the NFL, and it's exciting. More of a wide open passing league. So as a quarterback, it'd be a dream to play in that game. Kyle Quinlan, quarterback, McMaster.
Is it too late to bring him back? I mean, after all, Montreal seems to need a quarterback. How's that for the irony? He retires, and the Alouettes go through a problem at quarterback. That'll teach you. And that would be karma, hard at work. That's enough of that. So I guess I made my point. He looked pretty good in the backfield in Montreal right now when you're looking at the other options. I mean, I don't understand it. I really don't. I know the CFL wants – I know it's not that they don't want a Canadian quarterback. I believe, and truthfully, I believe it has to do with the GMs and the coaches. Most of them are American, and it's not about not wanting a Canadian to be there. I believe it has to do everything with training. It has to do with where you're coming from. The playbooks may be individual for each team, but their basis is in basic football. And the most basic of basic football is played in the United States, whereas in Canada they don't think of us as playing their game, I guess. And I just don't think it's not an intentional kind of prejudice against Canadian quarterbacks, but I think, ipso facto, that walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it must be they don't like Canadian quarterbacks. And can it change? I don't know. Do I hope so? Absolutely. And it should change. I mean, I don't have anything against Claros and, Ricky Ray and Mike Riley and Henry Burris. I don't have Darian Durant. I don't have anything against these guys. I think they're awesome. And I think we should always have the very best of the best. But there should also be the best Canadian quarterback in the event that he can learn. I mean, Canadians have proven that they can beat Americans at their own game. I mean, just this past year, the number one draft pick in basketball was a Torontonian, actually from Brampton. We've had multiple MVPs in baseball that are Canadian. I mean, two sports that are pretty much, American, and Canadians are doing pretty well in those. Football is the last nut that we have to crack, and I'm hoping we crack it soon. There are some good Canadian football players, but not at the same elite level as baseball and basketball. Hopefully that'll happen, and if it does, for the most part, those players will probably play in the U.S., and they won't play in Canada. But having said that, I'm talking quarterback right now, and I think we could produce a quarterback that would be very competitive in the CFL. I'm dying to find out. One of the other things that is one of my little pet peeves and one of my hobbies is the anti-bullying. I got to tell you, I'm biased when it comes to that. If I showed you a picture of me on my junior high school football team, yeah, I was a smallish kind of guy. And I went to a reunion, and one of the guys said, "Hey, Frank, I heard that in school you loved eating grass." Yeah, I kind of didn't, but, you know, this is what happens when you're a small guy and the big guys decide to show that they can overpower you. So when Joe Appel and company talk about, you know, about bullying, it does hit me. It hits me at home, trust me. But that's neither here or there. I just wanted to mention that because it's important that, you know, it's funny, though, that a tough sport like football brings that kind of image and that kind of interpretation of life forward, you know, and to bring notoriety to the fact that big people might pick on small people. And yet, the irony is that you get the CFL where Chad Owens isn't, or Mighty Mouse, they don't call him Mighty Mouse for no reason, a smallish kind of guy. And if you look around the league, a lot of small players make good money in the CFL, and they're star players. So they can, you know, do their thing. Now, I did take a run at the Riders in the sense that I didn't, you know, that I didn't say that they would win. So, I mean, this will be my apology to you Rider fans.
I am Rider Pride,
the flag bearers of our league,
the spirit of our game.
I will deafen all foes.
I will represent my team,
my province,
and my fellow fans with honor and pride,
and inspire the next generation
of the Rider Nation.
Green is my color.
Football is my game.
This is my pledge. This is my pledge.
This is my pledge.
And it should be your pledge. How about Edmonton? Let's give them some airtime. Sometimes life deals you some interesting blows, and Edmonton right now is in the middle of one of those runs where they can't seem to make a win. But you know what? They will be doing that shortly. I know I sound like I'm getting impatient with them actually doing something that appears to be a win. But you know what? It's bound to happen. One of the reasons why we all care about the CFL is because it is our personal property. And by that I mean the CFL more than any other league here in Canada. And this is just factual. Even if you reach down to the MLS, The soccer league, only a few Canadian teams, majority of American teams. Hockey, only a few Canadian teams, majority of American teams. Baseball, a Canadian team, the rest are American. And the NFL, they're all American. There are people in the city who wish there was one Canadian team in that league. There is one league that is professional and has a quality of entertainment at a professional level, and God forbid the prices aren't expensive. It is the Canadian Football League. So when I promote the league, I promote it selfishly because I'm cheap. I don't want to spend $400 on a ticket to go see one game when I can pay $400 for season tickets. Does that make any sense to anybody else out there? It makes sense to me. So it's totally selfish why I promote the CFL and why I think so highly of the CFL. They're a good bargain, and as much as I'm glad that they're not that expensive, I hope someday they will be very expensive, because I happen to think that the people involved in the game, right up to the commissioner and the CEO, they're good people that are running the league. I mean, how many leagues do you know? Look what happened when Phoenix was, basically afloat. And the only thing bailing them was the National Hockey League, the league. In the Canadian Football League, when a team starts to run into trouble, there's always a white knight on the horizon. And, we can make fun of Senator Braley, the fact that he's a Hamilton fan, owns the doesn't own the Ticats, but owns the Argos, their arch rival, and the BC Lions, a cat of a different color. That's what makes the CFL different and, to me, admirable, and a reason for me to say I'm throwing my hat in the ring and I want to support this league. So I hope you guys enjoy listening to Candid Frank Live on Rouge Radio. If you do, thank you for doing so. If you don't, it means you're still listening, so that's okay too. You can be a hater, if you will. Not that you are, but you know what I'm saying. So, chance to talk to an author, Paul Woods, wrote a book called Bouncing Back. Basically, the Argo football team in '81 hit rock bottom. Worst record in the history of the Toronto Argonauts, second worst record in the CFL history. '82 was a turnaround year. Obilovich came. Daryl Mouse Davis came with a thing called the run and shoot offense, and people kind of, what? Sounds like a gimmick to me, but it really there was something to it. And it took a few games for the players to get into it. Jan Craney himself today said that it took him 5-6 games to get into it. And the rest is, as they say, history. And to make sure that history has a great biography, and there are words to read about that history, our friend Paul Woods wrote a great book called Bouncing Back. And if you Google Bouncing Back, I promise you'll find the webpage, and you'll be able to see more about the 1983 Toronto Argonauts. Like the Phoenix, they rose from the ashes of the '81 Argonauts and became Grey Cup champions. And the Toronto Argonauts went through a long spell of not winning Grey Cups. They really did have a moment in history that was the lovable losers. And putting a book together about that team on the cusp of finally winning a championship, the 1983 Argonauts, the boat logo team.
The boat logo, yay, the boat logo. We all love the boat logo.
Exactly. And it's an amazing feat when you think about it, because today in the CFL, there are teams that have not won in a long time. I mean, if I told you that Saskatchewan has not won a Grey Cup in a long time, people might be surprised by the enthusiasm of their fans, but in fact that is true. Although there are only 8 teams, there does come a time when some teams hit a real dry spell. Your book is about how that dry spell ended, and the reaction of those around it, and of course the players. Do I have it approximately right? With me is Paul Woods, the author of Bouncing Back. The national joke to Grey Cup champs.
Sorry, Frank. Yes,
okay.
You've got that right. You've got it right. It's about the journey from a futility to success, from misery to ecstasy, both for the players and for the fans. There's a big chunk of the roster in 1983 that won the Grey Cup who were there in 1981 for the worst season in Argonaut history. So the journey that they went on to turn that around is a remarkable story, and the journey that we as fans got to be there to see it and be part of it was a lot of fun. So it's really for both, yes.
So your book is about the inside moments from management to players to the fans, and starting with the season, getting a flavor and understanding, a touchy-feely on how bad the team was in 81.
Yeah, it covers all three seasons in quite a bit of detail. More detail as you get towards the Grey Cup in '83, of course. But there's three fairly extensive and lengthy chapters about '81, about the way that season started, and then the arrival of Ralph Sazio, and then the firing of Willie Wood, and the end of the season. It was a remarkably bad and difficult and in some ways comical season that ended in a record of 2-14, and yet had about 10 or 12 players who were good enough to be on the Grey Cup championship team 2 years later, and who came together in large part as a group because they went through that year in '81.
Yeah, there were some real friendships and camaraderie forged in that year. 81 then, the biggest problem with 81 was the big management shuffle. Some suggest that the firing of Woods might have been not a good move. But regardless, it led to 82. Or is there anything else you want to mention about 81 before we get off 81?
I wouldn't say too much more. The only thing I'd say about 81, and I think we should move into the more successful time, is Willie Wood was not a great head coach. I don't think anybody would argue the opposite. But Willie Wood was in many ways responsible for the team that became a champion 2 years later. He recruited Terry Greer and Cedric Minter. He obtained Conridge Holloway in a trade. He made some extremely good draft choices in 1981 that brought 4 key members of that team, and he started making trades to get other draft choices that he wasn't around to enjoy, but also helped them rebuild their Canadian talent. In fact, I argue in the book that between 81 and 83, the Argos had the greatest infusion of Canadian talent over a short period of time as any team in Canadian history. They went from the worst Canadian talent in the league in 80 and 81 to by far the best in 83. And a large part of that was thanks to the draft choices that Willie Wood picked up in trades. So he deserves credit for that 83 Grey Cup team, even though he was long gone.
Who are some of those players that you tote so highly in that manner?
Well, I mean, in '81, back in those days, you had what was called a territorial exemption. So before the draft even started, every team was allowed to protect 2 players from their region. And in 1981, the Argos protected Jan Carinci, who played slot back, fullback, receiver, running back. He was the holder on place kicks. He was the backup punter. He returned punts. He did everything for them. So he was one of their 2 territorial picks. The other one was Dan Ferroni, an offensive guard, who was going into the Hall of Fame this year, and in my opinion is the greatest offensive lineman in the history of the Argonauts. Willie Wood drafted in '81 Tom Trefo, who was a starting member of the offensive line in '82 and '83 when the Argos were successful. He drafted Gord Elser, who was a backup linebacker and an extremely key guy on special teams. In '82, they added Willie Wood obtained in '81, but he didn't get to the Argos until '82, Bob Bronk, who was an unbelievably powerful fullback who was like a 6th offensive lineman there protecting the quarterbacks. They drafted Jeff Townsend, who was a starting wide receiver in the 1983 Grey Cup. They drafted Tony Antunovic, who was a starting center in the 1983 Grey Cup. They drafted Calvin Prinster, who became a starting offensive tackle not only in the '83 Grey Cup, but also in 1991 he was still there. They even drafted Chris Schultz back then. He didn't join the Argonauts until 1986 because he was with the Dallas Cowboys for 3 years, but he was drafted in 1982 by the Argonauts. And then they picked up in trade Don Moen, who's an all-time Argo, one of the greatest linebackers in Argonauts history, came in a trade in 82. In 83, Ralph Sazio engineered a deal to acquire Hank Olisic from the Edmonton Eskimos, and he spent a lot of money to get Hank Olisic, whose punting was a huge factor in them winning the Grey Cup in 1983 and also again in 1991. So there you go. There's about 8 or 9 Canadians right there who joined the Argos in that span of time, and they were massively important in them turning that situation around and winning the Grey Cup in 83.
Yeah, it sounds to me, and maybe because we're concentrating on how good the decisions were, it almost seems as though they didn't make any bad decisions at that time.
Yeah, I guess you're right, Frank. I mean, I suppose if you were to go back and look at every single decision that was made, there might have been some mistakes. I mean, I think, frankly, they did make one mistake, one pretty big mistake that didn't cost them in 83, but might have cost them beyond 83, and that was they let Mouse Davis get away. Mouse Davis was the offensive coordinator in 82, the architect of the run-and-shoot offense, which was miles ahead of its time and is basically very similar to what teams in North America are doing now on both sides of the border. Mouse Davis was the guy who invented, plays where the quarterback and receiver decide on the fly where the ball is going. It's not, a set play. It's like, okay, we're going to see how you're getting covered, and that's where I'm going to throw it. And so both guys have to read it the same way. And the Argos, I think, from what I heard from the people I talked to, they basically Mouse Davis wanted a raise, and he kind of got lowballed, and he walked away and went to the USFL, and they were able to keep the run-and-shoot offense going without him in 83, thanks to the players knowing it incredibly well. But after that, it kind of got watered down, and I think if Mouse had stayed, they would have won more than one Grey Cup in that period of time.
Yeah, he was a brilliant man, and we those of us that were of age of understanding and comprehending sports casts and sports reporters did understand that everybody was kind of, what the heck is this? Is this going to work? Is this gimmickry? Is this something that actually has a chance to be successful? And when it was, I don't care what anybody says today, I think everybody was surprised how successful it was. It really didn't get a lot of credit, serious credit, when it first came up here, when Mouse brought it up. It really took winning for people to believe that this actually is a great idea.
Well, it took a while to work out properly. The first 4 games of 82, Bob Ovilovich was hired for the 82 season as the head coach, and he brought in Mouse Davis as the offensive coordinator. And the first 4 games that year, their offense struggled. I mean, it did not look good, and people were going, they were making jokes about it. They were writing headlines like "Run and What," or they made jokes about run and shoot. But the 5th game of the year, it suddenly started to work really, really well, and they beat the Edmonton Eskimos, the Grey Cup champions, the 4-time Grey Cup champions. They beat them up pretty good. And from that point on, that offense was almost unstoppable, and they finished first place. They had a humongous win in the Eastern Final in 82, and then they got into the Grey Cup against the Eskimos, who were at the end of their dynasty, who weren't going to be denied the final Grey Cup for Hugh Campbell, who was leaving to go to the USFL. And they ran into a terrible weather day, rain and sleet and wind, and just things conspired. They weren't going to win that Grey Cup in 82, unfortunately, but it taught them how to be ready for the Grey Cup the following year. And the run and shoot offense in 82 was a thing to behold. It was for Argo fans who'd seen the Argos through the 70s. We never saw offense like that before. We were an offense that could never do anything through most of the 1970s and early 1980, 81, and all of a sudden we got an offense that is on fire, that where it seems like whatever Condredge Holloway wanted to do, it worked.
They did a great job, and it was if I remember correctly, gosh, I'm getting old. If I remember correctly, nobody really thought, no matter how good the Argos were playing, that really a Grey Cup was in the cards. It isn't just that the Argos were the lovable loser. We all witnessed the way the Argos snapped, defeat from the jaws of victory time and time again.
Yeah, there was a fatalism, I think, about being an Argo fan, that you just didn't think it was possible. You didn't believe, you figured something was going to go wrong, and I was part of that. I mean, I loved the team, and I believed that if I cheered hard enough, it would help them win and all of that sort of stuff. But I mean, when I write in the book that in the 1983 Grey Cup, I was at the game out in Vancouver, and tough game, hard to win. We finally get the lead, 18-17 inside the last 3 minutes. The last 3 minutes took forever, and finally we're down to 10 seconds on the clock. We're in a punting situation. Hank Olisic punts a huge, high, long kick deep into BC territory. Larry Crawford catches the punt. He starts running, and then he realizes he's going to run out of time, so he races for the sidelines, and he gets out of bounds with 1 second left. 1 second, and they're on their own 25-yard line, so they're 85 yards away from a touchdown. And one of the guys I was there with two buddies, and one of them reached over to shake my hand. And I said, "No, I'm not shaking your hand. There's a second left on the clock. It's not over." That's what Argo fans went through. We didn't think it was possible. And I'll never forget, when they won, when that next play, the last play happened, and the ball got knocked down, and we were champions. I was kind of in stunned disbelief, and I'll never forget there was an old man. Well, I shouldn't say an old man. There was an older man sitting a couple of rows in front of me. And he was an Argo fan. I was in a little section of Argo supporters up in BC Place, and there weren't many of us there. There was an older guy sitting there, and it was like he was crying, and he's going, "They won. They won." Like he was completely in disbelief over this.
And that was the mantra of the Argo fan here in Toronto. After all, the Argo call is a haunting call, a ghostly call. It is what it fits, the Argo image of back then. People now look at it as a proud thing, but in the old days, it was a way of saying they blew it again.
Argos. Well, that's right. It's funny. There's Terry Greer, who, of course, Terry Greer was the great receiver for the Argonauts in 82, 83, and all the way up to 85. And he was there for 80 and 81. And he told me that, in 80 and 81, he'd be on the subway and he'd hear Argos, and it sounded depressing and negative and sour. And then in 82, when they started winning, and in 83, when they were a really dominant team, he'd hear the exact same Argos, and he thought it sounded great. He just said there was a change in the feel of it because the team was winning. The
inflection.
I don't even know if it was the inflection. It was just more. It was more of the psychology of it or something, I think.
Yeah, well, it does have. It's amazing how you can take a word, and make it a call, and have that call have a different personality, if you will, dependent on how the person says it. It really is like that. And
sure.
Yeah, the Argos. So then in 81, we've talked about the moves that led to 82 that really turned the team around. And all this time, the team was drawing a lot of people. It's not that they were drawing few people. There were many Argo fans at that time, and many CFL fans at that time. 83 starts, and how does it begin? Your view on your research going into the 83 camp. What were we looking at? Did they see the success in their future? Was there that much confidence? Did they believe that this could be the year right from the onset?
Yeah, there was, within the team, there was an enormous amount of confidence going into 83. I mean, they felt like we're moving up to the next level. They had tasted success. They'd gotten to the Grey Cup. They'd lost, but they'd seen what it was like to be there, and they had virtually all the players back, or all the key guys were back from 82 to 83, with one exception, that being Zach Henderson, who was there at the start, but was sort of disappeared fairly early on because of the import ratio. And they had added a piece on offense. You may recall that in the 82 Grey Cup, playing his first game as an Argonaut was a guy named Emmanuel Tolbert, receiver that they put in. He hadn't played all year long. He'd been on the practice roster and on the injury list, but they liked his speed and they put him into the Grey Cup. And his first time he touched the ball, he scored an 84-yard touchdown. And so Tolbert was a full-time starter in '83, and that added one more weapon to that offense, which was already very good. So there was a lot of confidence in '83. The other thing that they added in '83 was Hank Kalisic, and I mentioned him earlier as a hugely important factor as a punter. He was also the field goal kicker, and he had some challenges as a field goal kicker in '83, including in the '83 Grey Cup when he missed 3. But he was an enormous weapon as a punter. The field position that they got with Hank's punting was a factor all season long. So yeah, they had a great deal of confidence going into '83, and they rolled out of the gate. They started off 4-0. They won their first 4 games all pretty handily. Then they lost a couple, but they were 6-2 at midseason, and they went 6-2 in the second half of the season. Finished with a record of 12-4, most wins ever by a team in the East Division up till that time in the 16-game schedule. Yeah, they were a confident bunch, and they had a scare in the '83 Eastern Final. They played a 5-win Hamilton Tiger Cats team, and they fell behind 15-1 in the first quarter, and they were behind for most of that game. And I'll tell you, up in the stands, it was like, we cannot lose. We're a dominant team, and we're going to lose to Hamilton. And it looked for most of that game like we were going to lose to Hamilton until an incredible finish in the fourth quarter. I describe it in the book as the greatest playoff game ever. I think it really was. So they went into the Grey Cup at that point, having had to come from behind. But again, a very confident bunch. Carl Brazeley, who joined the team late in the '83 season, about halfway through, a little bit right after Labor Day, I guess, he joined. And he said when he got there, he just sensed that these guys, they knew what winning was about, and they felt they were going to win every time they stepped on the field.
And rightfully so. They ended up winning the Grey Cup, so it's not a surprise that they were that good. A reaction maybe, tell us a bit about a few of the players there, some of the interesting stories maybe with some of the players. I know that the Canadian players, guys like Dan Ferrone and Jan Carinci, they were very proud to be Grey Cup champions. Tell us about them and others that played on that Grey Cup team that we may not know, stuff we may not know about that people will enjoy reading in the book.
Well, there's some lots of interesting stories about guys and about their reactions to things. One story that I heard for the first time, which I really enjoyed, was Cedric Minter's story about winning the Grey Cup and what it meant to him. Cedric Minter was a star running back out of Boise State, recruited by Willie Wood in 1981, the Eastern Division Rookie of the Year that year. And then in '82, he's still playing the running back, but he becomes much more of a hybrid position. He was more of a receiver than a running back, frankly. I think he caught 62 passes in '82, which was unheard of for a running back in those days. And he was the weapon that really made the run and shoot hard to defend against, because he would go in motion, and teams wouldn't know quite what to do about him. So they win the Grey Cup in '83, and it's a huge part of due to Cedric Minter. He scored the winning touchdown against Hamilton in the Eastern Final with 27 seconds to go. He scored the winning touchdown against the BC Lions in the Grey Cup with 2 minutes and 30-odd seconds to go. And he was a huge factor. He was also playing out his option. He signed a 3-year contract when he came to Canada, and in his third year, he was hearing that there was an NFL interest in him. So he and the Argos just simply couldn't compete with the money that the NFL was going to offer. So he's playing out his option, and in fact, one of the sad stories is he didn't come back to Toronto for the Grey Cup parade in '83 because he was from out in Idaho, which was near BC. His wife had driven from Toronto to BC to get to the game, and then they just stayed out there. They went back to Idaho, and he missed the parade. But so he signs with the New York Jets in the following season, and he's in training camp with the New York Jets, and he's in his dormitory. As you know, players they live in dormitories during camp. He's up in the dorm, and there's a knock on his door, and it's none other than Mark Gastineau, the famous defensive end, who went on to become a really big star defensive end with the New York Jets. At the time, I don't think Gastineau was all that well known. So Gastineau's knocking on his door and says, "There's a package here for you." So, and he says, "Can I open it?" And Minter says, "Yeah, okay, go ahead, open the package." So Gastineau opens the package, and what's in there? His 1983 Grey Cup ring. And Mark Gastineau was blown away by this. He was knocked out by this ring. And Cedric Minter didn't. You may know, Frank, that in football there's a tradition that in training camp the rookies have to do crazy things. They have to get up in front of the room and sing their school song. They have to perform skits and all that sort of thing when they're all gathering for a meal. Cedric Minter didn't have to do any of that stuff because he was a pro who had a Grey Cup ring. And then he finished the story by telling me, I wear my ring every day. He said, we used to talk in that locker room about how we really wanted to win a Grey Cup, and if we won a Grey Cup, we were going to wear that ring every day. I wear my ring every day. That's really cool that a guy 30 years later who's now a school principal down in Idaho, long since retired from football, played in the NFL with the Jets, he still wears his Grey Cup ring every day.
And there are some really nice Grey Cup rings out there. I've seen a few.
Yeah, and the one from '83, by comparison, is quite small. I mean, there's a funny story in the book where Kelvin Prinster, who was a rookie in '83, said, "That's it. Like it's supposed to be big. This ring's not that big." And of course, Kelvin was there in '91 when they won a ring that was probably about the size of a doorknob or something. But other guys said that they thought the Grey Cup ring was plenty big, and in fact they didn't. They don't. A lot of them don't wear it, partly because they feel they don't want to sort of nick it up and things. But it's a nice ring, and in fact there's a picture of the ring on the back cover of my book. But if you were to put it side by side with the 1991 ring or the 2012 Grey Cup ring, it's probably about half the size.
So there's a lot of pride in winning a Grey Cup, and that pride also spreads to American players that come up here in Canada. I talked about Dan Ferrone and Jan Craney, the Bobsey twins. It seems they were connected at the hip. In fact, they were the two poster boys for the Grey Cup championship. Tell us a bit about them and their little personal fraternity they had going on.
Well, the thing that I really liked about featuring them in the book was the fact that they're two Toronto kids. Dan's from Oakville, but it's effectively from Toronto, and Jan grew up in Scarborough, and they came up at the same time, 1981, as territorial exemption picks, and by 1983 they were team captains. And there's the two guys that got to carry the cup. I'll never forget the sight of the two of them after Jake Goddard presented the cup to Dan Ferrone in BC Place. And for the first time ever, he handed the microphone to Ferrone on TV, and Dan wasn't expecting it, and he just said, I think he said, "Toronto, you've waited a long time. Here it is." And he told me later, like he was in a fog. He had no idea what he even said. He looked dazed. If you watch the footage, he looked dazed. And of course, they were saying that it was really hard to breathe in there that day. Somebody said there wasn't much oxygen in BC Place. But I'll never forget, though, after that all happened, Jan Craney and Dan Ferrone went down onto the field at BC Place, and they walked around that stadium showing the Grey Cup to Argo fans in the stands, holding it up, one guy with one handle, the other guy with the other handle, showing that cup to us. And I wanted that picture for the cover of my book, and I tracked down the one picture I wanted that showed that. So the cover of the book shows the two hands, Dan Ferrone's hand with the tape on it, and Jan Craney's hand, no gloves. They didn't wear gloves back then. Each of them have a hand on the handle of that Grey Cup, and it's a great iconic photo. Like you said, they were poster boys for that, and they were the Toronto kids. They were the two guys from Toronto. And a funny story about the Cup coming back to Toronto. They had a team party, and they partied all night, and they were going to fly back the next day. And at the party, Coach Bob Obilovich gave the Grey Cup to Mike Hamiluk, an offensive lineman. He was he started sometimes, he was a backup at times. He was their long snapper on field goals and punts. And Obilovich gave the cup to Mike Hamiluk and said, "You look after this tonight." And I think he might have done that because Hamiluk was a military police officer before he was a football player. He was a big, strong guy. And so Hamiluk kept the cup in his hotel room overnight. And he and his wife had it, they shared it overnight, and then he brings it to the airplane, and he's got it on the airplane. And in fact, there's a picture in one of the papers of him strapping the seat belt onto the Grey Cup on the plane. And all through the ride, and he's thinking, great, I'm the keeper of the cup. And then as they're landing, Obilovich says to him, give me that cup. It's going to Ferroni and Craney. They're bringing it in because they're Toronto kids. And he says, you son of a bitch, you're taking that cup away from me now? But he was obviously proud of winning it, and he had a huge role to play in it. And there's a funny story in the book about that plane ride and what happened at the Grey Cup, but I'll leave that one unspoken and let people buy the book and read the story themselves.
And it's no coincidence we're doing this interview today. That moment 30 years ago, and it is 30 years ago now, and I have a lot of great hair to prove that it did happen that long ago. What a moment it was. Still sticks in the memory of football fans in Toronto. I suppose even football fans in Canada that follow the Toronto Argonauts. And most of all, the Argo management today. They are tomorrow, and this is, of course, recorded for the show on Wednesday. They will be having a thing downtown where people get to meet some of the players. This team, the 83 team, a couple of players like Jan Craney and Dan Ferrone. It's really good. It's really nice to have this memorable moment, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic, and the team is doing a great job of making it an accessible event for fans. I mean, you mentioned the thing on Wednesday night at Real Sports Bar. There's going to be an availability with Ferroni and Craney and two members of the 2012 Grey Cup champions. They'll have a panel discussion, and fans will be able to ask questions, and interact with them. And then on Friday night, of course, the reunion game, the celebration game, the game to honor the 1983 Grey Cup champions against Calgary. They will, of course, be brought out at halftime for a great ceremony, and who knows what's in store, but I bet it's going to be really entertaining and really memorable. And before the game, at 6 o'clock, fans that want to get autographs will be able to do that. They're having an availability with the players from 83. I believe it's at Gate 1. I think that the players will be inside Windows Restaurant. I think you can enter through Gate 1, get autographs. I'll be there selling books. You can buy the book. You can go and get the book autographed by all these players that are coming back, and coaches and other guys associated with the team. And I think it's going to be a great night. And then I think probably after the game, a bunch of those 83 guys will be congregating, I imagine, at Shoeless Joe's, where there's often a post-game party. I don't know if that's the case this time, but I assume it is. And so lots of chances for fans of the Argonauts to interact with their heroes from 30 years ago.
Yep, and of course the boat logo, which we can't stop talking about, one of the greatest logos in sports.
I wouldn't say one of, it's the greatest.
I'm glad we agree.
Yeah.
I guess to conclude our interview today, our teaser for your book, the book Bouncing Back, we are, of course, with Paul Wood's author. The research in doing this book, this won't be in the book. Let's talk a little bit in conclusion here of the book, the research and how much work you did putting this book together and who you met with for how long and how far did you go and all that wonderful stuff.
Yeah, it was about a 14-month project, pretty much full time. I started it, I think, in May of last year. I got the brainwave that I wanted to write this book, and so I started reaching out to players and coaches and others, and started doing the interviews. I interviewed about 4 people altogether, pretty well all of the key players that were on the Argonauts back then. Coach Bob Obilovich, Coach Mouse Davis, the family of the late Ralph Sazio, the president. I interviewed coaches from other teams that they played against. Hugh Campbell, who they played against in the 82 Grey Cup, and Adam Rita, who was the offensive coordinator of the BC Lions in the 83 Grey Cup, and Al Bruno of the Tiger Cats, George Brancato of the Rough Riders. I even interviewed, I went to see Willie Wood, who is not well. He's unfortunately suffering from dementia, and he doesn't have any real tangible memories of his time in Toronto, I'm sorry to say, but I had a good interview with his son, who was an 11-year-old kid hanging around at Exhibition Stadium every day during the summers of 80 and 81, and had lots of stories. So I went, to British Columbia, I went to New Brunswick, I went to the District of Columbia, I went to Tennessee, to Cleveland, to around Ohio, around Ontario and Toronto. Kentucky. I did phone interviews all over North America. Everybody was enthusiastic about participating. Everybody wanted to tell their story. They all feel very fondly about that team. Some of the guys were fantastic in providing research material. I got some tapes of old games from some guys. Some of the photos in the book came from players. One of the players, Steve Delco, a defensive lineman, his wife actually, as it turned out, was a freelance photographer back in the early '80s, and she had some tremendously great photos that ended up in the book. And in fact, some of Jacqueline Igel Delco's photos are showing up this week every day in the Toronto Sun as they're running excerpts from the book. It was an intense process. The book's 85,000 words. I probably have 300 or 400,000 words worth of interview transcript, lots of research material that I had to go through, but it was a pleasure to do. I mean, it consumed me for the 14 months. It was intense and challenging at times around, it affects your personal life. You're not thinking about anything else at times. All you're thinking about is that book, or you're working on that book. But I'm very happy with the way it turned out. I think it tells a great story, multiple stories that form a great story, and I've had great response from readers, from reviewers, from players who say you've captured it, you've told the story. It was labor of love, and I'm very happy to say that I think people who pick it up who like that team, or who are curious about that team, who weren't even around at the time, will be swept up in the stories, and will get a great appreciation for the 3-year period of the Toronto Argonauts, 1981 to 83.
Did you leave anything out that you wish you had included?
I have some stories that didn't make it that just because of the space limitations, or else there just wasn't really a natural fit for them. There were some cute anecdotes and some interesting stories. But I wouldn't say that there was anything that I have any regrets about leaving out. It was more a case where I made some editorial decisions that, a particular story didn't really fit or wasn't really essential. But I've got a few things in my notebook that may yet surface on my website. I've got a website for the book, bouncingbackbook.ca. And I've populated that with a whole lot of interesting stuff, including some great video footage of old games and of the parade in 1983. I've got some audio on there from stuff in the past, and I've got audio of interviews I've done with you as well, Frank. And there's lots of cool stuff there. And I think my plan is to keep that website going, even though the book is now done and out for sale. I think the legacy of the '83 Argonauts lives beyond the book, and I'd like to keep adding stuff to the site, and so it may be that I'll open up the notebook and look at some of those transcripts and pop up the odd story in there in the future.
Well, and this leads, I guess, my final question, and it'll be probably one that you won't be able to answer today, but you will eventually have to answer. What's next?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm actually, as a result of writing the book, I'm in discussions with a figure in the Canadian sporting scene who might want me to ghostwrite a book, or I wouldn't say ghostwrite, but to work with him on a book project. I have thought about some additional books
what did I do with my
Argonauts, and it's far too early to tell whether I'll achieve them, but I've thought about the idea that, hey, that Grey Cup in '83 was great, but it was just the first of 6 that had happened over the last 30 years. So maybe there's a book in store on the 1991 Argonauts, and then maybe one on the 96, 97, and so on and so forth. That's to be determined, but I do think that the 91 Argonauts would make an incredible book. I mean, that's the John Candy, Bruce McNall, Wayne Gretzky, Rocket Ismail, Pinball Clemens, Matt Dunnigan, Chris Gaines. There was an incredible group of guys with that team. And '89, I think actually, frankly, if I were to do that, it would be like this book. It wouldn't be just 1991. It would be '89, '90, and '91, because there's an interesting transition that occurred there. '89 was the first year in what was then called the Sky Dome. It was the last year of Bob Obilovich and Ralph Sazio as heads of the Argonauts. It was the year that Harry Ornest took over ownership of the team, and it was a disappointing year from the on-field standpoint, as 81 was. 1990 was a year when the offense exploded. That was Don Matthews and the shoot out the lights offense, and Pinball Clemens ran wild and won the Most Outstanding Player award. The Argos had backup quarterbacks who were throwing for 8 touchdowns a game. Ricky Foggy, I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And then 1991 was the incredible year with the McNall Gretzky Candy Group taking over ownership. Rocket Ismail comes to town on a ridiculously high contract. They win the Grey Cup. It's an amazing story. So that's a possibility, but that's to be determined in the future. Right now, I'm what's in store in the immediate future is I got to sell this book. I've written it. It's out for sale, and I need to make my money back because I spent a lot of money in interviewing and getting it printed and so on. So I would encourage anybody listening to pick up a copy. It's a relatively inexpensive book at $23.99 for the book or $18.99 for the ebook. And I think people who buy it are going to feel they got their money's worth. I've had nothing but compliments from people. A lot of people have said to me, I couldn't put it down. It was just such a good story and so well told that I read the whole thing in 2 days. And that's 85,000 words. That's not easy to do, but it does seem to be a pretty quick read, and I think that's because it's a great story and there's great quotes from the players and so on.
We've gone on so long now, I'll have to have another show day.
Yeah, well, let's do it. I mean, we'll get through this week. This is a busy week for everybody, for me, for the Argonauts, for you, I'm sure, and it's going to be a fun week. I mean, I think the fans are going to. What I've been saying is that Friday night, when the Argonaut organization brings back that 83 team, is an opportunity for people to finally say thank you to the men of 83 who deserve our thanks. I mean, they broke a 31-year drought, and they won with class and character, and I think we should all be on our feet to cheer for them on Friday night, and I think the people of Toronto will do that, and I think it's going to be a great show, and people are going to come out of there really feeling great about that 83 team, and I hope if they do that and they buy the book that they'll feel even better.
I am inclined to agree with you, and I hope so wholeheartedly. Thank you for taking the time with me here. I know that it's a long research. I had a suggestion for the book, but you know what? No, you know what? I'll give it to you. The American Experiment. That might be an interesting book as well.
Yeah, it would be an interesting book. There's been one, I think, done about it.
Has there?
It might be in the works. I'm not sure it's been published yet, but I read something, I think... a reporter out west, I think with the Vancouver province, is doing one, and he's a good reporter, and I think it's actually going to be a very interesting book. I believe it's being published maybe this fall. I'm not sure.
Do they have a name for it?
I don't remember the name of the book. I think the reporter is Ed Willis, but I can't recall what the book is called. But I saw something about it, and I thought, that's going to be a good read.
Oh, okay. Well, I was kind of hoping you could do it. But you know what? Paul Woods, thank you for taking the time to talk to us here on Candid Frank Live. And the book, again, is called Bouncing Back, From National Joke to Grey Cup Champions, the inside story of the 1983 Toronto Argonauts, and if I may add, the 2 years leading up to that championship season. Paul, thank you for taking the time with us.
Thank you, Frank. Always a pleasure, and I'm glad to do it.
Yes. What a great evening. For those of you that hung around, the Candid Frank Live show, streamed on Rouge Radio, was proud to present a little CFL talk, a little CIS talk, and the talk about a new book out called Bouncing Back. Just Google Bouncing Back. It'll get there. It's the story of the Argos from 81 to 83, the lowest of the lowest time for them, and 81 to the highest up until then time, and winning the Grey Cup. And, of course, it's the boat logo, and many of us are big fans of the boat logo. We still don't understand why there isn't a third jersey that is the boat logo. But that is the case. That's the way it is. That's the way it must be, I guess. We could change it a little bit, can't we? I think we can. And I think we should. And you know what? We probably will. Thanks for tuning in.